It has been said of you that you invented psychedelic music.
The way I write things, I just write them with a clash between reality and fantasy, mostly. You have to use fantasy in order to show different sides of reality. That's how it can bend.
That's Juba. We have Larry Lee. We got Billy Cox playing bass. And Mitch Mitchell.
You know, all I'm like, this is supposed to feel, that's all.
So thank you very much. I just say peace and happiness.
The Jimi Hendrix Experience.
And thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Thank you for watching and subscribing. I filmed it in 2 days or 2 parts, and it might be over an hour video, but I did try my best to consolidate all the information in a concise and comprehensive manner. To the right here is a table of contents for my presentation today about and honoring as a tribute Jimi Hendrix, Black History Month, Black Lives Matter, and consequently Club 27, the numerology behind it, and alphanumeric ciphers, which is part of gematria, a Hebrew word for studying the alphanumeric translations in texts and current events. I appreciate your comments. I am no way a historian. However, I am a documentary filmmaker, so I do aggregate a lot of research, and this is just through my lens and my personal decodes. Hey everyone, it's Allison. I'm wearing a Jimi Hendrix merch item today. I found it at a thrifted store, so I often wear it, and I actually wore this shirt on the day I met Zachary K. Hubbard in Seattle, Washington. We had commemorated the interview of Zachary K. Hubbard of Gematria Effect News for the documentary Scenes of Metaphysics, and of course that also happened to be the birthplace of James Marshall, or as his stage name is, Jimi Hendrix. Born Johnny Allen Hendrix on November 27th, 1942, as an American musician, singer, and songwriter. So it says he was born in Seattle, Washington, and Hendrix began playing the guitar at the age of 15. What museums they have in Seattle about Jimi Hendrix really quick, because I'd love to go back to Seattle just to where people are allowed to go and leave their respects. There's a Museum of Pop Culture. Seems like they have a exposition about his music. Okay, there's this Jimi Hendrix statue in a Jimi Hendrix park. I'm really interested in this park. Let's go to directions. Green space, that's awesome. That's so cool. Broad lawn next to Northwest African American Museum honoring the Seattle native rock star. Wow, look at that guitar. That's awesome. So I would like to travel here the next time I go to Seattle. I like that it's a green open space that is really well marked on the map. That's on my to-do list. So I really did enjoy my trip there. I thought it was awesome to see the skyline, but also travel through the ferry up north and go hiking. Here's some of the photos that I took. Fast forward, I learned a lot about numerology from my experience traveling to Seattle and meeting Zachary K. Hubbard of Gematria Effect News. And previously, before I had met Zach, I had also traveled to meet Derek Takuri of Gematria Nader. So between the two experts of Gematria that the Western world knows of, and then when I ran into Derek Takuri's blog post about Jimi Hendrix, I was very excited that Derek had already taken the time out of his day to do a full decode about the numerology of Jimi Hendrix. I have already reviewed that article previously in another video, and I will get back to it in this video, but for now it's in one of my chapters. So let me go ahead and I'll get into the presentation next. So this little introduction of the Jimi Hendrix experience decodes that I personally have contributed. So as you can see, I do write in chapter 7, we're going to review Gematrinator's blog, Jimi Hendrix Murder by Numbers, but since that blog post is heavily focused on the later period of Jimmy's life, I wanted to sort of archive that towards the end of the presentation. So we're going to start actually with chapter 1, which is Woodstock 1969, a video tribute. Well, it is close to his passing. It says, my tribute YouTube video to Jimi Hendrix video, the first and second copyright strikes versus fair use. So let's head over to my YouTube channel. So I just provided a copy. It says blocked copyright use, but now it's up and this is the link. Alright, if we head over to Netboard and we hit the videos tab, the last video that I posted that is live now is Jimi Hendrix live at Woodstock and interviews Takeon's Plus Edit VHS 1969. So this video I had attempted to upload previously in 2020, however it garnered a first copyright strike because the music was ripped straight from the VHS itself, and that was converted from analog to digital. My production team added visual effects from Takeon's Plus machine, which is an analog glitch device for videos. We left the music intact. However, SME, which is Sony Music Entertainment Group, they own the rights to that VHS, particularly that recording, and that's fair enough. So then what I did for this video, which is now uploaded yet has a muted strike, I do say here that SME Copyrights muted part of the Jimi Hendrix rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, the US national anthem. It's from 106 to 118, marked at the exact point the national turns into muting. What's with that? I'm not exactly sure. The audio was a remix. So in this video, I had remixed it through what I linked up is Virtual DJ. It's a free application. So the effects that I added to this audio were delay, echo, and I added a filter. Okay, that's what it was. So in this video, I mixed in interviews with the music of Jimi Hendrix as a tribute to who he was as a person that we know on camera. I wasn't born in the lifetime of Jimi Hendrix, yet my parents were very enthusiastic about his music and would often play his records along with Bob Dylan's, taking a lot of this information strictly from Wikipedia. That itself is a disclaimer because of course Wikipedia is not an authentic source. A lot of these dates could be manipulated and or falsified, we don't know. But I do use Wikipedia a lot because I know that this is the source that most general audiences are going to click when they see some sort of encyclopedia link. Let's get to the brief overview. His music mainstream career spanned only 4 years. That's because of his unfortunate death as a 27-year-old. Because he passed away on 1970. I think there was a website link actually for Club 27. Unfortunately, Jimi Hendrix is part of this club, and it will tell you a list of the people according to cause of death, date of death, birth, fame, age, and references. And if you type search for Jimi Hendrix, pioneering electric guitarist, singer, and songwriter, the Jimi Hendrix and Band of Gypsies. He was 27 years, 295 days. Furthermore, from here, what we can do is go straight to Gematrinator. As I said, I met Derek Tickery of Gematrinator. So go down into usually the calculator for Gematria. That's where we type in words. In this case, what we would do is type in Jimi Hendrix as the most basic function of learning about this name and the stage name, or why it was chosen for him or why he chose it. We don't know. Date durations is what we're going to check. So let's do a Gematrinator website calculation of Jimi Hendrix's numerology, birthday numerology, and day of passing numerology. And it says here it's from the birthday November 27, 1942. 1942. To the last day that is given to us under 27 Club, and the day of passing is September 18th, 1970. So September is the 9th month, 18, and the year was 1970. Oh, this just has days. Okay, right. So if we do that the same way, it's going to equal the same thing as the Wikipedia website. That's what we want. So 27 years, 295 days. That's correct. 27 years, 295 days. You can split this up. It can be years, days, or it can be years, months, weeks, days. So it really depends. I personally like this one, so we'll keep the months and the weeks, okay? Now that we have the exact year, we know that Jimi Hendrix was 27 years old. That confirms here, age 27, and he passed away in Kensington, London, England. That's because his career took him abroad to the UK. But what does it say? He then played with Curtis Knight and the Squire before moving to England in late 1966 after bassist Chas Chandler of the Animals became his manager. And as we'll see throughout this presentation, it was primarily through Chas Chandler, who was the bassist of the group The Animals. So let's see if that, oh, right here, Chas Chandler of The Animals. So within months, Hendrix had earned 3 UK top 10 hits with the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Hey Joe, Purple Haze, and The Wind Cries Mary. He achieved fame in the US after his performance at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967, and in 1968, his third and final studio album, Electric Ladyland, reached #1 in the US. The double LP was Hendrix's most commercially successful release and his first and only #1 album that he produced himself. The world's highest paid performer, he headlined the Woodstock Festival in 1969 and Isle of Wight Festival in 1970 before his accidental death in London from barbiturate-related asphyxia on September 18, 1970. Hendrix was inspired by American rock and roll electric blues. He favored overdriven amplifiers with high volume and gain and was instrumental in popularizing and previously undesirable sounds caused by guitar amplifier feedback. He was one of the first guitarists to make extensive use of tone-altering effects units in mainstream rock, such as fuzz, distortion, Octavia wah-wah, and Univibe. He was the first musician to use stereophonic phasing effects in recordings. Someone from Rolling Stones commented, Hendrix pioneered the use of the instrument as an electronic sound source. Players before him had experimented with feedback and distortion, but Hendrix turned those effects and others into a controlled, fluid vocabulary every bit as personal as the blues which he began. Hendrix was the recipient of several music awards during his lifetime and posthumously. In 1967, readers voted him the Pop Musician of the Year. Billboard named him the Artist of the Year. Rolling Stone declared him the Performer of the Year. Guitar Player named him the Rock Guitarist of the Year. The Jimi Hendrix Experience was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992, curiously the year I was born, and the UK Music Hall of Fame in 2005. Rolling Stone ranked the band's 3 studio albums, Are You Experienced?, Axis, Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland among the 100 greatest albums of all time, and they ranked Hendrix as the greatest guitarist and the 6th greatest artist of all time. Let me see if this says psychedelic. Well, I think that there's a lot of people contesting as to the origination of psychedelic rock, and I'm not going to go any further, but as you can see, definitely he did partake in that. So these pages will be left. The Animals we didn't really go through, but all you have to know about The Animals is that it has Chas Chandler as the bassist, right? As Chandler, and he managed the band Slade and Jimi Hendrix. So as long as you know that Chas Chandler helped Jimi Hendrix produce his music abroad in the UK, okay? Chandler was a key figure in Hendrix's rise to critical and commercial success. Chandler provided the young musician with living accommodations and financed the Experience's first single, Hey Joe, before they had a recording contract. He was also instrumental in introducing to Eric Clapton, who is an English rock and blues guitarist, singer, and songwriter. It was through this introduction that Hendrix was given the opportunity to play with Clapton and Cream on stage. It was Chandler's idea for Hendrix to set his guitar on fire, which made national news when this idea was used at a concert at the Finsbury Park Astoria Theatre and subsequently at the Monterey Pop Festival. Hendrix's sound engineer Eddie Kramer later recalled that Chandler was very hands-on and the first 2 Hendrix albums, adding that he was his mentor, and I think it was very necessary. By 1968, Chandler had become fed up with the recording sessions for Hendrix's album Electric Ladyland, which dropped the year 1970, the unfortunate year of Hendrix's death. Claiming that Jimi Hendrix's album Electric Ladyland was self-indulgent, Chandler left management services in the hands of Michael Jeffrey, up here, English music business manager of the 1960s, who is best known for his management of the Animals and Jimi Hendrix. So Frank Michael Jeffrey, remember him. I'm gonna open him up too, because during the following year, Chandler then managed and produced the British rock band Slade for 12 years. This is very intriguing and says a lot about why we're going to use numerology to look into Jimi Hendrix's life. Because a lot of this is very suspicious. When we're starting to see how money is influencing the recording of albums and how different bands approach their management of their artists, then we're going to need to follow the money flow and make sure that the accounts of past records in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and history, that their archives are preserved as integral to the true story as they are. So that's why we use numerology to find out about the authenticity of the news reports that are being published about these famous celebrities. And a lot of these news reports are going to be through public information resources such as Wikipedia, which is susceptible to mismanagement. So we have to have a critical attention to detail and make sure that every spelling is correct that we're publishing in our numerology calculator, alphanumeric translations, and as well that disclaimer as before we go into the numerology. Let's just say that these are bookmarks that I have up, like this presentation. And now that we've talked about my tribute video and what's so important to me and why I am so intrigued about his career and why I want to preserve his legacy as intact to as possible we can in the truth community, then now we can move on to chapter 2. And chapter 2 is research based, and I do not claim that I am a historian at all. I do not have a degree in math, science, or humanities. I have a degree in film. To be concrete, it's a bachelor's of art in cinema arts. I also have experience in documentary filmmaking. I was an intern for the documentary Food Choices. From there, I produced my own documentary on YouTube called The Metaphysics Video. It spawned from the idea that philosophy has 4 major branches, and so one of them was metaphysics. And the next video documentary I do is going to be the second branch of philosophy, which is epistemology. So through my work in documentary filmmaking, I realized that I had the capacity to research as much information publicly available, condense that into a presentation that counted as historical research through the lens of documentary filmmaking, but it's always going to be biased because it's through my lens, and I want to put that disclaimer out as well, that I do not have sufficient historical lessons on anything whatsoever, and all my research is done through the free internet access. Of course, there can be many books about this, however, there is a paywall for those books, and for my research work, I just wanted to find the most free access available information. So I hope that you will comment below and follow along with your own interpretations and decodes, as well as sources that I should look into or that we should share. So thank you for watching. And that is my introduction. Nice to meet you. Next. So let's go into Black History Month Gematria. So what I found through typing in, you know what, I'm just gonna use English Ordinal right now. Okay, this is the most logical cipher. It is written about in Manly P. Hall's book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, published in 1928. So if you look in that book, the chapter, The Cryptogram as a Factor in Symbolic Philosophy, you're going to find under 7 major ciphers of cryptography, number 4 is numeric ciphers. So The most logical numeric cipher that Manly P. Hall gives us is A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, D equals 4, and so on up until the letter Z, which is 26, because there are 26 letters of the alphabet. So curiously, what has been shared to us by Zachary K. Hubbard and Derek Takuri is that God equals 26 in English ordinal, and you can prove that for yourself, because what do? You take G, which is the 7th letter, so 7, O, which is the 15th letter, so 7 plus 15, and D, which is the 4th letter. 7 plus 15 plus 4 equals 26. So God is a very important word in our vernacular or our vocabulary, right? And this is why 26 is such a sacred number, and I'm sure it had to do something with why they chose 26 letters of the English alphabet somewhere in the 16th century, because that's when the switch of the Gregorian calendar was enacted as well. So we went from a 24 letter base alphabet, God, 26, right? So this is why we use English ordinal as one of the most foundational tables of correspondences in numeric ciphers. So that's why I'm gonna do a brief overview. And we know that Black History Month is very important in the United States ever since the year. Under the Black History Month on History Channel, it's, you know what, I don't know what to do when I see the N-word, because I feel like that's inauthentic to my reading experience. I do not say that word out loud, but I know that I speak Spanish, and I know that the color for black is the same word as the N-word in English, and that is no mistake, because the Spanish conquistadors are the ones that enacted slavery and brought slavery ships from Europe to the United States. Spanish conquistadors who spoke Spanish, that's the word for black, and that's the word that they used, apparently, consequently, as we know through looking through history, that's the word they used in Spanish. And so in English translation, that's a very repulsive, derogatory word, and if it's used out loud or written by, or even thought by, a non-African American person. I just wanted to give that as a disclaimer as well, that if you see that word on any documents that I'm reading, it's purely because I'm going to the most generic historic sites, and that's what they're writing about, and that's my disclaimer from knowing Spanish, that I know where that word originated from, etymologically speaking, and I don't agree with subscribing to the idea that our skin color is a generic color of a crayon. And as I say that, there's how many crayons? There's over hundreds, so it's unfair to just project that some person has a generic skin color. Pardon me and excuse me, that's my interpretation. I want to use the most politically correct words. So even on Wikipedia, they're using that word. I know that Bob Dylan has a word with the N-word, and that actually, listening to that song, I did a double take, because I'm not sure, what in history moment, why he was allowed to use that in his song lyrics. But Black History Month, the precursor of Black History Month was created in 1926 in the United States when historian Carter G. Woodson and the Association for the Study of the Life and History announced the second week of February to be History Week of Spanish word. Well, I'm assuming that this person then, this says, created the precursor to Black History Month, so that's why he is credited to that. And let me type that into English ordinal, and we get 177. So whatever the implications are, it was a good implication, because here we left with so much brilliant history that this person has granted to humanity. But what happens is that, so we have Carter G. Woodson matches with the Jesuit order in 2 ciphers, and in one cipher, reverse ordinal 201, Carter G. Woodson matches with the Holy Bible, Jewish mysticism, State of Israel, and Black Hole and Sun. Do you see how these are different faiths that are being categorized and archived with the same number value? Because there's a database that they're creating. And so when they create these words, or they publicize, or they create celebrities, or from these secret societies that they indoctrinate people, ordinary, brilliant minds that they indoctor through these secret rituals. Because that celebrity name has a certain gematria value, certain numerology value, they know that they can use that celebrity figure as a karmic debt escape valve. So through this numerological riddle system, they're basically bypassing karma by archiving these different celebrity names and with different rituals and with different alignments on the calendar dates and with different eclipses. And so what they're doing here is through Carter G. Woodson, through ascribing him with the numerology value of the Jesuit order, they're also implying that, oh, we've caused so much chaos and disorder, but between the fantasy of all these different religious orders, like the Jesuit order, which is the Holy Bible, but also with the Holy Bible is the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament is the Tanakh, which is the first Hebrew Bible, which is derived from Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. And it's a lot about what is the state of Israel as like the birth rock of civilization. And then also you get the scientific route, which is the idea of a galaxy where we have a solar system and we live in the Milky Way galaxy, which has a black hole at the center of the universe, and we revolve around the sun, so it's a heliocentric universe. So we get that black hole and sun archives here. So see, they're creating so much chaos by contradicting themselves with different religions and then archiving all these numbers underneath the celebrity, and that is their karmic bypass because they believe in karma, which is derived from Kabbalah, mysticism, and that is what I believe they're doing with African American culture and history in Black History Month, because the way that they see it, they can, if we're going to evolve in consciousness as a species every year and increase our consciousness, which is our mental, spiritual capacity as human beings, if they're going to allow that to happen, because we live in a linear timeline where we're growing every day and learning new things and adapting and becoming more peaceful and willing to contribute with each other, because we're becoming a more globalized world through the internet, through technology that allows us to communicate with other parts of the globe. They know that is through evolving in consciousness. If they're going to allow that to have some certain degree of living free as we are with free will, then they're going to control that narrative as much as they can, because they've contributed to so much negative karma on humanity. They've wiped out many generations of people and animals. This is titled genocide, and they have also, through lies and manipulation and propaganda, contributed to hell on earth, figuratively, through the books that they charter to be scribed out by people, and all the numerology and cryptography that they're manipulating people through mind control and brainwash through advertisement sales and through celebrity culture and all this. So that's a big, long-winded answer to this infographic over here, but I just wanted to talk about that. Zachary K. Hubbard said in the documentary footage that the Jesuits are a military army of the Catholic Church, and they were created in defense to the Protestant Reformation, and they were expelled, but Catherine the Great saved 201 Jesuits. But February is the birth month. That's not my quotes. This is from the Britannica. Why is Black History Month? This is from here. So February is Black History Month. Since the 1970s, that familiar declaration has introduced countless celebrations of African American history and achievement precedents. But why is February designed as a month to commemorate African American history? The answer lies with eminent American historian Carter G. Woodson, who pioneered the field of African American studies in the early 20th century. Inspired by having attended a 3-week national celebration of the 50th anniversary of emancipation in 1915, Woodson joined 4 other members in founding the association and to encourage scholars to engage in the intensive study of the Black past, a subject that had long been sorely neglected by academia in U.S. schools. Woodson began editing the association's principal scholarly publication, spurred by his college fraternity, Omega Psi Psi, introduced this History Literature Week determined to, and see how they're still using this word, which means black in Spanish, but they're using this word throughout 1915 when English is already established. So why are they using this black word as official History Week, Literature Week by Omega Psi Psi college fraternity? That's what I find suspicious. I don't find Carter G. Woodson suspicious. I feel like this person was a true inspiring leader, and thank God that they contributed their life to humanity. But yes, I am suspicious of this fraternity college that Woodson was introduced to in his college, and that indoctrinated this Spanish word history, literature. Like already it's telling you that this black history has been sorely neglected by academia. So what does this fraternity have, like, it just seems so ill-construed, and that's just my perspective. I feel like this word at that time, 1915, was a derogatory word still, because that's what the Spanish conquistadors were using. So this should already be black, right? Because it should be an English word, Black History Month. So that's why Carter G. Woodson is the precursor to Black History, African American History Month in the United States. And like I said, this has a riddle with the Jesuit order, and through that, probably that fraternity that we see right here, the Jesuit order, I'm sure it has something to do with Omega Psi Psi. So that's the kind of karma that they're weaving in with these, inspirational celebrities. So February is the birth month of two figures who loom large in the Black past: U.S. President Abraham Lincoln, born February 12th, who issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and African American abolitionist, author, and orator Frederick Douglass. So if you look up here, Black History Month matches with Christ Resurrected, scripted by Numbers, indentured servant by all means, this is on purpose. Black History Month, Catholic Church, Bilderberg Group, St. Ignatius of Loyola, Compass and Square, tainting. That's what they are doing. They're thwarting, infecting, tainting, mutating the past, and doing their fake philanthropy through these celebrities who are naive, but they target these individuals and use them as vehicles for their narrative, and that's what I feel like is happening. But thank God we have Black History Month, because it is a time, like it is said, that, good gracious, there's so much that we need to catch up on. That's why I'm doing this tribute video in February of all months too, because I recognize that and I feel like it is important. Let's do this every month. I agree. So it says, right, this February is the birth month of these two leaders, which is Frederick Douglass, which again is probably another victim, because Frederick Douglass, good gracious, is one of the most inspiring people that I could ever think of looking up on Wikipedia. Completely inspired by who this legendary person is and the legacy that they've left behind, because yes, they were born in February 1818. American social reformer, abolitionist, orator, writer, and statesman. After escaping from slavery in Maryland, which consequently I was born in Maryland. I was born in Rockville, Maryland. So after escaping slavery in Maryland, he became a national leader of the abolitionist movement in Massachusetts and New York, becoming famous for his oratory and incisive anti-slavery writings. I do not suspect that his intentions were fraudulent. What I do suspect that he was a target for hate crime by the Jesuit order and through some secret society. So Frederick Douglass matches with 4th of July, the Jesuit order, and Pontius Pilate, not by coincidence. This is by numeric design. And coincidentally, Abraham Lincoln as well, the president that issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, after the 3rd year of the Civil War, his name in English ordinal is 123, which matches with conspiracy, outer space, and reptilians. So do you see how they are targets for their names of these gematria and numeric riddles, so that they can bypass karmic, that they are issuing these events that they're controlling. Again, another word important to this is abolition, and abolitionist matches with numerology and Masonic temple. And coincidentally, this is how I'm going to end this chapter. So emancipation and segregation both match in English Ordinal as 120. So after the Emancipation Proclamation, 1863, that didn't end slavery because that didn't partake in all states, and even after all states adopted that Emancipation Proclamation, there was still segregation that occurred. And segregation was upheld by the Constitution by this Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, so long as separate but equal facilities were provided, a requirement that was rarely met in practice. Okay, so it says President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, but segregation was still up until 1954 or 1964 that the Brown versus Board of Education and other landmark cases in the Supreme Court overturned segregation. So emancipation and segregation match in English Ordinal. That is by design, and this is really suspicious as to why the language is coded this way and why history is coded to the language and the calendar. And so now that we've concluded our chapter of Black History Month and done a revision with the numerology, we're going to look at Black Lives Matter. So yesterday we went up until this chapter, which was part of the Black History Month Decode chapter, studying this 1 and 2. But back to this I found from Zachary K. Hubbard, who shared this, and anyone in the community who was also adding to this list. But this is in the full reduction cipher. We're going to see how Black Lives Matter matches with a lot of agenda that happened this year. And from the record, it's going to be coronavirus, Washington, D.C., mind control, mask propaganda, fearful agenda, Anthony Fauci, Society of Jesus, brainwashers, and how does the term Black Lives Matter fit into this correlative number of 56 in full reduction? Why? Well, again, it's a fabricated phrase that is meant to correspond with their number rituals. And this is another one that someone in the comments pointed out, so thank you so much. They mentioned that when I was doing the video about water tiger, alien invasion, Jesuit order, fake alien invasion, well, I had missed the BLM movement equals 167. So as you can see, I was talking about 167 before with fake alien invasion, right? And I said, wow, I don't really think that means anything to me, 167. But yes, the 39th prime number, let me just double check. You can clearly see on this webpage the 39th prime number is 167, okay? Saturn equals 93 in English Ordinal, coronavirus equals 930 in English Sumerian, so of course 93 and the reflection 39 are going to be very important. Coded in to the fake alien invasion, coded in to the BLM movement. I think that's enough for now. As I hopefully you see what track I'm trying to go down, that it's not that the organic movement itself should be targeted for suspicious conspiracy, but it's the institutionalized version. Okay, so next, as we can see, this also matches, which was interesting. So what is the subject of Black Lives Matter? Well, it's all civil rights and reparations, which they both equal the same number in English Ordinal, which is 136. What is this deliberate design? Why does it take eras to implement these number systems through the language? Personally, I'm not sure, but I wanted to actually ask y'all what you think. I'm just surfacing with this research, and I'd really appreciate some feedback. The last thing I want to say about the Black Lives Matter movement is that BLM, the letters B, L, and M in English Ordinal cipher equal to 27. And that's what ties back into Jimi Hendrix, who unfortunately passes at the age of 27, joining the Club 27. 27 Club Wikipedia list consisting mostly of popular musicians, artists, or actors who died at the age of 27. So I will actually recommend to study one other person from this Club 27. I could mention a few others, but the first person I wanted to talk about with Club 27 and BLM equaling 27, and the math is drawn up here, 2 plus 12 plus 13 equals 27. Okay, so now that we're at this chapter of the video, we're going to go into Chapter 4, Blues Music and Club 27. So this is my interpretation of it. I haven't done enough research yet, but this is my brief hypothesis. I found out that through the 1960s, again, there was not a clean departure from abolition, from emancipation to segregation. It took decades, right? So even up until the 1960s, segregation was still prevalent. So the Chitlin Circuit is a relic of that era because a lot of musicians passed by this circuit, and I copied the quote here from the Wikipedia, but it just says, a collection of performance venues throughout the eastern, southern, and upper Midwest areas of the U.S. that provided commercial and cultural acceptance for African American musicians, comedians, and other entertainers during the era of racial segregation in the United States, from at least the early 19th century through the 1960s. Look at the Chitlin Circuit. Look up if Jimi Hendrix was a part of it, and they actually have, under notable performers, Jimi Hendrix was one of the performers on this Chitlin Circuit that was part of the era of this segregation. So, wow, already that's so much to unpack there, and what is this? And I took the Chitlin Circuit and ran it through the calculator. Unfortunately, I didn't personally see anything that stood out to me, but maybe if I quickly just leave this up, and someone in the comments might understand why this was named this way. But I'm just trying to move the story along for the Jimi Hendrix tribute, okay? One of the first blues originators who inspired Jimi, who was before Jimi's time, was Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson was born in 1911 and passed away in 1938. What's 1938 minus 1911? It's 27. So Robert Johnson, at age 27, the idea of a 27 club began to catch from blues musician Robert Johnson, who died in 1938, the earliest popular musician who has been included in the members of the 27 club. So now you know where this ritual originated from. It's from the musician Robert Johnson, who Netflix does have a documentary about him that was released in 2019. It's called Devil at a Crossroads because it's a famous, perhaps myth or fictional story about the music industry and what Robert Johnson may have had to commit to in terms of a contract with some labels. Because there's this famous quote. Look, it says it in the Robert Johnson Wikipedia. He sold his soul to the devil at a local crossroads to achieve musical success. And in this article, it also says much of his story has been reconstructed after his death by researchers. So how can you really know what's real? It seems like they could absolutely be fabricating and adding this spin because it suits their ritual. Contemporary artists, Muddy Waters, Ella Fitzgerald, and then Medgar Evers wasn't so Bob Dylan musician, is born in 1941. A year after Bob Dylan is born is James Marshall, a Jimi Hendrix. Motivated assassination. So 1942. Bob Dylan wrote a song about. Also in the year 1942, we have the birth of Aretha Franklin, who unfortunately passed away 3 years ago, 2018. But she was born the same year. Yeah, back to Robert Johnson. As we said, this concludes the chapter about Club 27 for now. So let's talk about Jimi Hendrix and why he was a member of Club 27. So there's a video on YouTube that has this title, My Uncle Was Jimi Hendrix's MK Ultra Handler, Evidence, and it has 1,000 views, published on 2019. And in it, it says, my paternal uncle, Paul Caruso, was well known as Jimi Hendrix's friend who regularly played with him. In reality, Jimi was a multi-generational MK Ultra Illuminati bloodline slave who was assassinated after he had a spiritual and MK Ultra awakening. I'm not sure how much of that is accurate or fabricated, but I personally agree that yes, he was a victim to the mind control operations of the US government and the US musical industry. And yes, I believe that Jimi had a spiritual awakening, which he portrays in 1969 at Woodstock by playing the national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, off script. And that was 1969. A year later is his death. So yes, I agree there's some suspicion that he was murdered or assassinated for breaking his MK Ultra. Paul Caruso, that name actually stuck out to me because there's a lyric in one of Jimmy's songs called EXP. In this song from 1968, it says, "Look, tonight we are featuring an interview with a very peculiar looking gentleman who goes by the name of Mr. Paul Caruso." So is this lady who's proclaiming Paul Caruso is her uncle, paternal uncle, on the internet, is she lying? I'm not sure. I watched her video. She seems honest. She knows what she's talking about. So I'll just leave it at there for now. So I wrote this excerpt before to a friend. So I think the government took Bob Dylan hostage in 1966 and practiced MK Ultra mind control on him at a government facility. I think they sold it off as a fake motorcycle accident in case he glitched. They could blame it on a head injury or something. Let's look at this because I thought this was really suspicious when Bob Dylan crashed his motorcycle, or did he? In 1966, the singer-songwriter was riding his beloved motorcycle on the backs of Woodstock when he lost control and crashed, or did he? It's one of the greatest stories of rock and roll. Yeah, that seems suspicious. I think that definitely something happened and they used this story about a motorcycle accident as a cover-up. This is one example of how I think that they use MK Ultra to celebrities and lie about it to the masses. So another thing I wanted to make full notice that is that means that Paul Caruso was a handler and apparently someone who was playing guitar with him. But also we have to think about the producer of Jimmy's album. And in here it says a few things, but I just want to get to this. Hendrix's sound engineer, Eddie Kramer, later recalled that Chandler was very hands-on with his two first Hendrix albums, adding that he was his mentor, and I think it was very necessary. So, who is Chandler? I already approached this in the last video yesterday, but Chas Chandler was the bassist from the band The Animals, and he later managed Jimi Hendrix, and I believe Chas Chandler is absolutely Chas Chandler, bassist in The Animals, but the bassist, Chas Chandler, also managed the band Slade and Jimi Hendrix. Okay, so this Chas Chandler is suspicious. Let's look at a better photo. Chas Chandler and Jimi Hendrix. Chas Chandler, Jimi Hendrix. Why they eventually split? Well, I'm just putting two and two together. Okay, so Eddie Kramer, I typed it in and equals 93. Saturn equals 93. So let's go into Eddie Kramer's Wikipedia page. All right. So the three people that I am framing as part of Jimi Hendrix's MK Ultra are Eddie Kramer. He's a sound recording producer and engineer who recorded Electric Ladyland, the last album of Jimi Hendrix, and Chas Chandler, who was the bassist of The Animals, but he managed Jimi Hendrix, and then Paul Caruso, who was a musician who played with Hendrix. So these are three figures that I do not trust. Eddie Kramer equals 93. That they're being manipulated and to use their gematria as some sort of handler. Let's go to Chas Chandler match. Okay, Chas Chandler matches with Freemason. So let me type in Freemason and then Chas Chandler. And what do we get? Yeah, also very suspicious. Like Eddie Kramer, producer, Chas Chandler, manager, and then Paul Caruso. Let's also type that in and see what we get. Paul Caruso. So these are like the ways that we see that, oh, they're coding this handler situation of Jimmy through these people. So Electric Ladyland, we're gonna have to study this as part of this chapter of Jimi Hendrix's having handlers, because this is his last album. Okay, Electric Ladyland, this is from the Wikipedia page. Let's go there. Okay, Electric Ladyland is the third and final studio album by the Jimi Hendrix Experience and the final studio album released in Hendrix's lifetime before his death in 1970. So this is a very important album and possibly the only album I'm going to interpret in this video because it's a numerology decode of his life to repair any damage that's been done, and I think this album is a good example. It was recorded by Eddie Kramer, let me find his name again, with Chas Chandler as producer and engineers Eddie Kramer. This is the album that had Jimi Hendrix's cover of Bob Dylan's song All Along the Watchtower, which became the Experience's best-selling single, peaking at number 6 in the UK and 20 in the US. So if we take this name of this album, I'm gonna tie this back into ufology a bit early, but I want y'all to see Project Bluebeam equals 148 and Electric Ladyland equals 148 in English Ordinal. So was the naming of this album title? It is possible that this album by Jimi Hendrix was inspired to code for Serge Monast's work. However, there's another decode that I found that I absolutely have to share, and I think it's so important to this riddle for Jimi Hendrix, and it is from King James VI, King of Scotland, and then he became the first of England. I saw this Twitter link and I was like so impressed and surprised that I had never heard of this before, but apparently King James was a black Iberian, and since King James was a king of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, he was a black man, and the King James Bible is named after him. King James approved 54 scholars to work on the translation, 47 worked in 6 groups at 3 locations for 7 years, comparing previous English translations, Geneva Bible, and texts in the original languages Hebrew and Greek. The King James translation had a significant influence on the English language and was widely accepted as a standard English Bible. Because of the project being overseen by King James and the care and precise attention to detail during this 7-year translation, the King James Bible was considered one of the most accurate translations in its existence. And she also provides this. I know this image of a black King James can be a little confusing because of your Western education, but this is the truth that is known by the rich and the elite in this world. I had to get your mind ready to receive the truth. King James came from a long line of black Scottish Stuart kings. 343 years of rulership in Scotland. The Stuarts not only ruled in Scotland, they ruled France, Spain, Ireland, and England, Britain, and Wales. King James was able to rule all of these lands because of all these people were of Iberian black descent. Because Jimi Hendrix's real name is James Marshall, or born Johnny Allen Hendrix. So yeah, is this nickname that Jimi has, James? I wouldn't doubt that there's some sort of ritual connection between King James 6 and 1 and Jimi Hendrix. So I put this to the test and I thought, so it's gonna come up as King James 6 and 1 on Wikipedia. So I just took that, I copied, and I placed it into the calculator, and voila, this is what you're gonna see. It's the same number in English Ordinal as Electric Ladyland, which is Jimi Hendrix's last studio album, and Project Bluebeam. So these 3 are now correlated, and let's just focus on those 3. So yeah, these are the 3 elements that I found. Wow, this must have a storyline involved. There must be, you know, we have to talk about reincarnation. We have to talk about he might have been groomed to have handlers from when he was very early on, because actually if you look into Jimi's biography, he was drafted into the army in 61 and was discharged the following year, and then after he was discharged from the army, that's when he started the gigs at the Chitlin circuit. So was he groomed so early on from the army? I wouldn't doubt it, because if you look into the details, which I have, he was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division, stationed in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. 101st Airborne equals 123 in English Ordinal. Okay, Airborne. And consequently, Jimi Hendrix equals 123 in English Ordinal. Yeah, I could imagine that the army was the first place that they started to indoctrinate and follow his identity, find a way to intervene in his life and introduce handlers and sign contracts to get him to the place where he might become a victim of MK Ultra. And then also the Fort Campbell, that's where he was stationed at. So if you take Fort Campbell and type it into the calculator, that also equals the same as Jimi Hendrix and 101st Airborne. So that's my theory, is that he was indoctrinated as early on as the army, after the army through the Chitlin circuit, which was a racially divided place that protected African Americans, but still it was part of condoning this entire infrastructure of segregation. And then after that, meeting Chas Chandler, who offered to introduce him to Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix was very inspired by Eric Clapton. So whatever Chas Chandler asked Jimmy to do, he probably thought it was conducive for his career to meet Eric Clapton, get to play with Eric Clapton, and lo and behold, all the back musical ties that get strung under the contract become oblivious, because that's a form of trickery and manipulation that the government and the music industry use in order to manipulate their artists. So back to King James VI and I. So apparently King James there was a failed assassination attempt against King James by the Jesuit order, and it's called the Gunpowder Plot of 1605. And I haven't looked too far into it, but what I did do is take gunpowder and I put it into the calculator, and it also equals 123 with Fort Campbell, with Jimi Hendrix, with 101st Airborne. So those are matches that I couldn't deny, and I felt like are part of the story that tell the larger picture of why he might have been a victim to Club 27. And if it's a larger riddle that includes this larger gunpowder plot, which is a Jesuit order assassination attempt, and then Jimmy is allegedly assassinated, it all kind of is some sort of riddle that ties into one another. And I forgot to add rock and roll, and that was thanks to Gematrinator, who found the match between Jimmy and rock and roll. So 123 is down the line, and of course conspiracy equals 123. So back to the conspiracy with the producer Eddie Kramer, right? All these lists of people. Eddie Kramer matches with Saturn, Chas Chandler matches with Freemason, Paul Caruso matches with Roman Empire. Back to those people, if you watch this interview of Hendrix, the last word he says in this interview is the word obsolete. I thought that was an interesting word. That was one of Jimmy's last interviews before his passing, and he says this word obsolete. And it also equals 93. So is that a warning or like some sort of word that he's saying so that people who are looking into this code, that he's leaving some sort of breadcrumbs because Eddie Kramer, his producer, equals 93? I'm not sure, but I thought it was an interesting note to add. And then from the Monterey Festival to Jimmy's murder, there's 3 years and 3 months. So 33, like the 33 degrees of Freemasonry. So Monterey Pop Festival, again, that was a festival where it launched Jimmy's career, all because of this planned marketing strategy from Chas Chandler. And okay, this performance put Hendrix on the map and generated an enormous amount of attention in the music press and newspaper alike. After that experience at Monterey Pop Festival, it launched his career, and from that festival to the day that he passes is 3 years and 3 months. So there was a comment here. It says, music was given for a Hendrix struck with topping the Who's guitar smashing tour de force. This was a writer from the Village Voice who wrote about the Hendrix performance in the English Sumerian cipher. It equals 1776, the year of the Declaration of Independence of the US. I mean, this is all contrived. It's clearly because then you put in tour de force, and that equals fake alien invasion. And the Village Voice, I mean, equals in coronavirus in English Ordinal. So, and the Village Voice, contrived paper, and a contrived interviewer, being told to say the phrases that will include the certain gematria to circumvent the rituals that they're doing and the karma that they're creating by these rituals. And again, burn his guitar equals fake alien invasion and parallels with tour de force. So he was forced to burn his guitar by his handlers to create some sort of ritual that would increase marketing sales. But through that marketing technique, it was a means of unnatural storytelling and handling of the celebrity. And also, you know, it's about musical success. If you put in musical success, that equals fake alien invasion. So let me type in those three things. I'm just using ordinal and Sumerian, but I'm using the reverse ones too. So we have these matching down the line with the tour de force. And what do I make of this? Well, I know that Jimmy was very inspired by certain entertainment that was geared towards space exploration and ufology. So let me tie this into the last chapter. Again, Electric Ladyland, the album matching with Project Bluebeam, right? And King James 6 and I. In this album by Electric Ladyland, there's a song called Little Miss Strange. This matches with Wuhan coronavirus, World Economic Forum. So do I think that these song titles were contrived? Yes, I do. Come On Part 1 equals 121. That matches also with Antichrist 121 English Ordinal. But here's this lyric that I had brought up before that says, here's a very peculiar looking man who goes by the name of Mr. Paul Caruso, who could have been one of his handlers. The name of this song is titled EXP. It says, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the radio station EXP on the dodgy subject of are there or are there not flying saucers or UFOs. He's giving this in his lyrics. And if you type in the entire lyrics of EXP, this equals 2019 in full reduction. Radio EXP equals 190 in English Ordinal. And here is his song, UFO, which I don't believe is a very popular song. It's definitely more obscure, and I'm not even sure what album this is on. Yeah, the title is called UFO, about that flying saucer scare, about the UFOs that people have been seeing. What's going on up there? His story is coded with this, but that seems like more organic, right? That seems like a passion that he actually really had. And the government and the music industry found a way to tie in their karma through this. So let's look at the Gematrinator's blog post. I had briefly looked at this in another video, but we're gonna go back now that I've done my presentation and explore this webpage. I'll just keep scrolling here. So Derek wrote that Jimmy was born on November 27th. That already has a date, numerology of 27, like Club 27, the year that he passed away. And the day numerology was 27. Jimmy equals 27 in Jewish reduced. Some of his other versions of his name equal 27. Ritual equals 27 full reduction. As we saw before, Derek found this match between rock and roll. So he also found rock equals 47. Seattle is on the 47th parallel. Seattle is Jimmy's birthplace, allegedly according to Wikipedia. Time equals 47. Total eclipse 47. Killing 47. And then Hendrix matches with Seattle. So I just want to thank Derek for starting the decode on this, and I feel like he did an excellent job. I just wanted to spawn off a few more commentaries, and the last chapter that I want to leave with is my personal numerology tribute as a fan of Jimi Hendrix, how I found in my organic numerology matches with him that made me discover, wow, what a coincidence. Is it? Maybe not, because he's my favorite artist. So this is how the universe helps us discover our passions, and especially through music and numbers. Again, my name is Allison Sarah Bauer. However, I am of dual nationality, so I often carry both of my parents' last names, in which case my name would be my full name, Allison Sarah Bauer Vizcaíno, or in Spanish, Alison Sara Bauer Vizcaíno. I cherish and preserve my identity through my last name. I grew up speaking 2 languages, English and Spanish. I am bilingual. I hope that I can contribute a video every week. As of now, I have been meeting that goal, and I just expect to keep my sense of accountability to create videos every week. And I want to be as detailed as possible. My last name, as I introduced myself earlier, is Bauer. Bauer in English ordinal matches with rock, 47. So if we put rock equals 47, Bauer, 47. I was born in a city with the name rock in it. I also love rock music. Alison Sarah Bauer, which I use on my Vimeo. So let me put this in psychedelic rock, 156, and that matches with psychedelic rock. So those 2 finds were enough for me to think, oh wow, that's so exciting. But another found that I credit to Sean Rocco is that if you type in, it says at the top, James Marshall, Jimi Hendrix, so just copy and paste that is what his name is on the Wikipedia, equals 255. And then if you type in my full name, which includes my Spanish last name, which again, earlier yesterday, I introduced myself as having dual nationality and a double identity because I speak 2 languages and I'm from 2 cultures. So this is my full name that I use for crediting in documentaries or something like that. It would be Alison Sarah Bauer Vizcaíno. So that matches with James Marshall, Jimi Hendrix. And then the last thing that Derek had found was that Allie Bauer, okay, full reduction, that's what it was. So Derek had found that from Allie Bauer to English ordinal to full reduction was 69. And so here's a full list. And then what's interesting is one of the first bands that I worked with in the music industry, in the metal scene, was this band from Chicago called DeVille. And that matches with me in English ordinal, and I also threw in reincarnation because I am a firm believer in reincarnation, and I think that has a big riddle to why I made a bridge from James VI of Scotland, James I of England, to James Marshall, Jimi Hendrix. This is very advanced for me, but if you type in Johnny Allen Hendrix, which is allegedly his actual real name, is 212, and Jimmy's birthday is 2 months, 12 days before mine. So it's quite interesting, right? There's some connections, and to top it off, when I realized that Jimi Hendrix had a brother named Leon Hendrix, and Leon is also an artist and performer, I went to check if he had an Instagram because yes, he is still alive, and Leon Hendrix allegedly has this Instagram called Leon Morris Hendrix, and he tags a lot of industry leaders, so I'm assuming it's a certified real account. It just doesn't have a blue check mark. I'm not sure, but I did go through that Instagram page and commented a lot, and that account followed me back, so I was really excited that potentially Jimi Hendrix's brother follows people back on Instagram, and if you're curious, go try it out yourself, because all I did was leave a few comments and it seems like he was really responsive. And so yeah, all in all, this is just my fascination with rock music, psychedelic music, and growing up listening to Jimmy and Bob Dylan, and how they, especially Jimi Hendrix, and how he ties into Black Lives Matter and how he ties into Black History Month. And like I said, I'm not an expert, and I hope that I was using politically correct terms, but please correct me if you feel like I used incorrect language or terminology. And last thing I want to say is that Jimmy, and according to the Rolling Stones, he would never answer to James, but he would watch 15 minutes of Buster Crabbe in this series called Flash Gordon, and allegedly he comes home and says, "My name is Buster," so a lot of people called him Buster. And Flash Gordon is a series about space adventures and flying saucers, and even Rolling Stone says that all that stuff about Jimmy loving Flash Gordon, flying saucers. It seems obvious where his personality came from. So let me pull up Flash Gordon really quick so you know what series I'm talking about. It's a 1934 version, which would have been, you know, Jimmy was born in 1942, so this series was a decade old by the time he was a child. But that's one of them. I know that Jimmy's interest in ufology also included the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I read that just by surfing this. Jimi Hendrix. Okay, yeah, a list of Jimi Hendrix's favorite books and science fiction that changed his life. Yeah, Jimi Hendrix's favorite books, one of them is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which consequently I do own one copy of that book. But I'm glad they kept this list intact. You can see that Jimmy's passion was genuinely possibly him, that he was interested in ufology. And Buster Crab, if you type it in reverse ordinal, that's my birth date right there. And that is the end of my presentation. I certainly use numerology to look into Project Blue Beam, ufology, and fake alien invasion theories. A lot of this is from my interest in music and the psychedelic movement. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope you'll have a great rest of your day, and leave some comments down below, and thanks again. Have a good one. Bye.